Jesus began to teach beside the sea. Such a very large crowd gathered around him, and that he got into a boat on a sea and sat there while the whole crowd was beside the sea on land. He began to teach to them many things in parables. And in his teaching, he said to them, "Listen, a sower went out to sow. As he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Other seed fell on the rocky ground, where it did not have much soil, and it sprang up quickly, since it had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away. Other seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, and it yielded no grain. Other seed fell onto good soil and brought forth grain, growing up and increasing and yield 30 and 60 and 100-fold. And he said to them, let anyone with ears to hear listen." "Do you not understand this parable?" he said to them. And they said, how will you understand all the parables unless you listen? The sower sows the word. These are the ones on the path where the word is sown. When they hear, Satan immediately comes and takes them away, and the word that is sown in them. And these are the ones sown on the rocky ground. When they hear the word, they immediately receive it with joy, but they have no root and endure only for a while. Then, when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately they fall away. And others are those sown among the thorns. These are the ones who hear the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth and the desire for other things come in and choke the word, and it yields nothing. And these are the ones that were sown on good soil. They hear the word and accept it and bear fruit, 30 and 60 and 100-fold. I tell that story and use it oftentimes when I'm training and talking about teaching, because our kids are like the ground, and we're spreading seed, and we don't know what's going to happen to that seed. I can tell you that you will never quite know the impact you have on kids, and sometimes it's really frustrating when we work with our kids. But I want you to know that you need to trust the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will sow the good seed. And I know that the Holy Spirit has taken hold of many kids here, and sometimes we don't know about it until 5, 10, 15 years down the way. And so as we come to church school and we have kids that have a hard time sitting still, or maybe like to talk to their friends a little bit too much, and we get really frustrated, I always try and remember that we're sowing seeds, and we never know when those seeds are going to sprout. And so knowing that God is here with us helps us. Let's go to the next slides. As an education servant staff, I don't use the word volunteer, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, I can't do this job without you, and so you all are doing the surveying. I just facilitate what you need to do. And we really get to serve by each other, serve side by side, and God calls us to serve one another. And so this is a way that I always use servant staff. A couple of the characteristics I like to look at is being a team player. Remembering that as a team player, you need to help solve problems. I can't solve all of those problems because let me tell you, if you haven't been here at 6:30 or a Wednesday night or Sunday morning, it gets a little crazy. And I have a really hard time being in about 12 places at once. And so helping each other be a problem solver is really helpful. Also remembering that as a team player, we just have to kind of relax and go with the flow. For those of you who have been here, you recognize that that is really important on some nights. And then appreciate and encourage each other. As a team player, we want you to encourage one another and grow from one another and learn from each other. I look for servant staff that are willing to be authentic and intentional with our kids. Youth and our young people can tell whether you really care. Do you really want to be there? And so one of the things I say is for us to listen, don't judge. We don't know where our kids are coming from. We don't always know the whole story. And so listen. Listen to what they have to say and what they have to bring to the table. And they can tell whether you're fully present. So when we're here, having intentional conversations, being intentional about saying our kids' names when they're here, being intentional with each other. That's why I have name tags, because I'm really horrible with names. So it's really hard for me not to be able to call people by name. It takes me a long time to remember names. But being intentional by calling somebody by their name. I want you to attend to your own faith. This is a time for you to grow too, not just for your kids. This is a lifelong process, and we want our kids to know that this may be challenging for you as we talk about certain stories. There may be bits and pieces that as you read the story, something sparks and go, oh, I never thought about it that way. Dive a little deeper, ask questions, even if it's just to yourself, and you can go back and look again. I want you to believe that God is working through you. God truly is present here and is working through each and every one of you. I see it all the time, and whether you see it, I see it, and others see it, that the kids are excited to be here, and the parents and adults that are with them are excited too. I want you to laugh when you're here. I want you to play. I want you to enjoy the kids, and I want you to pray. Pray for those kiddos before they come and when they go home. Pray for the other leaders around you so that you don't have to do this alone. Pray that you have your own strength. And then don't take yourself too seriously. Really? We want our kids to have fun. And we know that God has a sense of humor. I mean, look at some of the things that God's created, and we're going to talk about that in our next rotation, which is creation. God created some really awesome and amazing and weird things. So we want to remember that. God has joy and is very joyful for us to be around, wants us to be joyful around each other. I want you to engage. As you engage with each other and with the youth, engage without controlling. Being able to give choices and recognize that some kids won't be able to meet you where you want them to. They're not quite ready to start talking about some of those things, but yet they're ready to be here and have fun with their friends and with you. Empower. We have kids that have amazing gifts. Some of them are here tonight, our high school youth that are here, that we've said, you know what, you're great with those kids, and they are. So discovering the gifts of the kids that are in your room, in your class, in your group, and saying, and recognizing them, saying, I noticed you have, I really like that picture. Do you enjoy coloring? Yeah, I enjoy coloring. Well, that's a wonderful gift. Naming it. Kids don't think that coloring is a gift, but it is. I mean, sharing those pictures with one another. Also, maybe you have a child who has a lot of empathy, and when one child is having a really rough night, you have another child in the room who is willing to go sit by that child without being told. Look for those things so you can name them. Name them with those kids so that they can start claiming their own gifts. Encourage. Encourage our kids to dive into the Word, and encourage each other to dive a little deeper on your own faith journey. How do you interact with each other and the young people around you? They are watching you. Let me tell you, those kids have eyes and ears in every corner of this building and every corner of this city. Let me tell you, you go to the mall, they're going to see you. And as you start building relationships with them, they're going to be so excited to see you. And go ahead, give them a hug. Give them a little pat, give them a high five. And so they're going to be watching, and they're going to be wondering what you're doing. I'm going to have you go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit, before we do this activity, I'm going to kind of finish out a few of our basics, and then we'll go and talk about where do we see our kids today. As a shepherd, some people wonder, well, what's the difference between a shepherd and a workshop leader? Just so that we're all on the same page, it's really important to know that our shepherds, we really want them to be with those kids all year long because we want them to build those relationships with our kids. They're obviously the ones who will help take attendance. Now, attendance really isn't for the purpose of, did you come tonight? Oh, where did they go? They're not here tonight. But it's really if you have kids that have been gone 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks, or even they're gone and it's not like them, those are things to let me know so that we can follow up with those families. When we have families that have been here and all of a sudden they kind of fall off the face of the earth, those are things that I can go back and look and say, oh, well, they weren't here for this month and this month, but then they came back. I wonder if everything's okay. Reading a staff note. Now, I have a staff note that I give out every week, and I'll show you where those mailboxes are, but those staff notes are really important not only for the shepherds and the workshop leaders and the helpers and the music staff, because it's one of my only ways of communicating to all of you at the same time. And so it's important for you to get here early enough to read those staff notes because every once in a while there's maybe a change in the schedule or something different is happening, or I found out that somebody's going to be gone that I didn't know about, and I can put that in the note. As a shepherd, I encourage and want you to participate fully in the activity. As a shepherd, my goal is that you're not standing off to the side, visiting with the other shepherd and the workshop helper, because I know it's wonderful. We get to know each other. It's fun to get to know each other and to spend time with each other. But really, as a shepherd, I'd like to see you sitting at the table with those kiddos and helping the kiddos with the activity or engaging them in intentional conversation and saying, how was your day today? Especially if you have a kiddo in your room that is maybe a little quiet and quieter than normal. This is an opportunity for the shepherds to sit down next to the student and say, how's it going today? Build that relationship, show that you care. The shepherds are really the ones to take the lead in redirecting any of the negative behavior or behavior that we don't like to see. You know those kiddos the best, especially as you get further on in the year, being with them week after week compared to the workshop leaders that see them once. It's really helpful to those workshop leaders and helpers that they can focus on the lesson and the teaching of concept, and you as a shepherd can really focus on those kids. I know it's really helpful in music when the shepherds take the lead on that because we've got a lot more kids. Like at 6:30, a lot of times there's maybe between 40 and 50 kids in here at music at one time. And so having those shepherds really take the lead allows Tricia and the rest of the music staff to take music and lead it and make sure that every kid is engaged to the best of their ability. Shepherds, I really want you to focus on building those relationships. Get to know your kids. Ask them questions about who they live with and what are their favorite things. And when you find out, oh, they really like baseball, ask them about it a week from now so that they can kind of start building a relationship with you as well. I usually have a parent note of some kind for you to send home as shepherds. And then shepherds, obviously, if there's any concerns of any of your kiddos or things that are happening in the classroom, please let me know. I'm always available. The workshop leaders, you're going to take a role in that teaching of that lesson. You're going to be the one that's the most familiar with that lesson and any materials that are in that room. You teach the same lesson for 5 weeks, minus some changes that maybe are with developmental, with your little kids compared to your 5th graders. Those are some changes that you make that are, as I have written in the lesson, but also as you see fit. I know that you all have some common sense, so recognizing what 5th graders can handle compared to kindergartners. There's a staff note again for those workshop leaders. I want you to read that Bible story and prepare yourself, knowing what that story is to the point where you can tell the story without having to read it. Because when you're able to tell the story and not read it in your own words, you're able to engage with those students at a much higher level. Again, communicating any concerns to me. Workshop helpers. As workshop helpers, you're assisting in that workshop. Make sure that you're engaged with those kids. You're familiar with that lesson in case the leader is gone. Now, I'm not expecting you to take the lead if you're not comfortable when a leader is gone. However, if a leader is gone and I bring a sub in, it's really important for the helper to say, okay, I know where the materials are, because the person who's coming in has no idea. And you're going to be familiar with those materials that are there. Where are the markers? Where are the extra worksheets? Where are the coloring pages? Where do I find the staff note? Those are things that as a helper, you're going to be familiar with. I do want you to read that Bible story so that as you're helping the kids with that activity, you're available and you know that story so you can answer questions as well, one-on-one with kids. Again, communicating with me any concerns. Now we do the rotation church school concept, and there's a few reasons why. Number one, it's fun. Really, I like the rotation model, but really it hits those multiple intelligences, which simply identifies and recognizes that kids all learn differently, as we do, whether we recognize how we learn or not. But we have kids that learn by doing, kinesthetically, by playing games. We have kids that learn by doing art. They're very creative and connect quite well with those art projects. Or in the kitchen room, doing some cooking. I don't know what kid doesn't, appreciate cooking. We have kids that look forward to the kitchen room every single time. What food are we get to eat this time? We have the science room and some games, as well as the drama room. Maybe not always, the drama's not always acting out absolutely everything, but maybe it's a guest speaker like we have this time, or it's a puppet show. It's a way to act out or hear the story in a different way. Then the Tent Tales room is some storytelling. And then, of course, we have the movie room. Sometimes the movie is directly related to the story and it's just a summary of the story. Or it may be a common movie that we hear today, like I think we've done E.T. before, and we've watched E.T., a portion of it, and then we've related it back to the Bible story. So those are kind of the two ways we hear the movie room. Of course, my creation book is down there. Hold on. Our first rotation this year is actually kind of our first year of our 6-year rotation. So we start with creation. And so I wanted to read this story to you because in the Spark Storybook Bible, it is a great depiction of the creation story. Before God created the world, there was nothing at all except God. On the first day of creation, the wind of God blew. Whoosh, whoosh, swoosh. God said, "Let there be light." Crackle, boom, bang! There was light. God saw that the light was good. Then split. God divided the light and the darkness into day and night. On the second day, God said, "Let there be sky." Pillow, puff, there was sky. God saw that the sky was indeed good. On the third day, God said, "Let there be water and dry land." Drip, drop, plunk. There was water. Crackle, crunch, snap. There was dry land. God saw that the water and land were good. Then God said, "Let there be plants and trees." Rustle, 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 pop. There were plants and there were trees. God saw that the plants and the trees were good. On the fourth day, God said, "Let there be a sun and moon and stars." Shimmer, shimmer, shine. There was a sun and there was a moon and thousands of stars. God saw that the sun and the moon and stars were good. On the fifth day, God said, "Let there be sea animals that swim and birds that fly." Wiggle, 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 splish, splash. There were sea animals. Flutter, putter, tweet. There were birds. God saw that the sea animals and the birds were good. On the sixth day, God said, "Let there be animals of every kind on the earth." Growl, growl, snort. There were animals with fur. Skitter, scatter, creep. There were bugs. Slither, slink, hop. There were reptiles. God saw that the animals and bugs and reptiles were good. Then God said, "Let there be people on the earth." Blink, wick, hiccup. There were people on the earth. God saw that the people were very good. On the seventh day, God said, "It is time to rest." Whew. God and all of creation rested. As we hear that story, what's interesting is when you hear it from a different perspective, maybe not on the first day, God created. When you hear it from a children's story perspective and you have all those different language words, how fun is it to hear the story? And also the kids remember those stories. When you are expressive, you all are going to think about how I said all those words, right? Yep. So one reason why I want you to practice those stories is so that you can be expressive, enjoy it, have fun with it. It's okay if you make a little bit of a fool of yourself. The kids are going to love it, no matter what. So, as we look at the different rooms, I want to share a little bit so that you all are aware of kind of what's going to happen in each room. And some people say, well, I'm only going to be in the kitchen. Well, sometimes it's helpful to know what's happening in the other rooms so you know where the focus is. So for the Tent Tales room, they're going to listen to the story. It's going to be playing on a DVD player, but we're going to be covering the DVD player up. So all they're going to be doing is sitting in a darkened room. And we do that so that they engage their auditory skills. Then we're going to have a flashlight, and that guy, the leader, is going to be basically pointing to simple shapes that I hang on the wall for each day. And as they hear the story, they'll hear on the first day, and they'll shine the flashlight on day one. And what's going to happen after that is after they've heard the story, then each class, each grade, each group is going to be adding a very specific shape to a large mural that we're going to have hanging in the wall, on the wall in the hallway. So for instance, the kindergarten kids are going to be starting in Tent Tales first. Every week, it's going to be all 3 sessions, it's going to have the kindergartners. And I have simple shapes for the kindergartners for day 1. And they're going to cut out those shapes, they're going to trace them. And yeah, we're not expecting perfection. We know that they're just starting to learn those skills of cutting and pasting. And so that's why we have simple shapes. And it's fun to watch how they can cut. Then we're going to hang those pictures on a big sheet that's part of day 1 on the mural in the hallway. The next week, then, I will have day 2 partitioned off. And the second group that's in there, which will be the kindergarten first grade, like the first graders, they'll be doing another shape, which will represent day number 2. And all the way up to the final week, which will have the older kids doing the final shapes, which include people. And so by the end, by our Kids Sabbath time, we're going to have this large mural that we have a ton of a ton of stars and moons, and there's going to be a ton of animals and plants that have all been cut out with different colors by our kids, and then they're going to paste those on those murals to be hung in the hallway. The second room, our Acts Out room, I'm kind of excited about this room, partly because when we did this the first time 6 years ago, it was so well received. And so we're going to talk about what it means to be good stewards of creation and its people. So we're going to have a guest speaker. So every single class that enters Acts Out is going to have a different experience, because I'm not going to be able to get a guest speaker to come 5 weeks in a row, 3 different sessions. And so I'll have a schedule for the Acts Out people. I'll have a schedule in there of who's coming when. And our goal is that we'll have people from all different areas. Game and Fish, I know that Greg Gullickson came several years ago. The fire department, law enforcement, and how they care for people, nurses, and farmers, as well as, you know, any occupation, and how to stay-at-home moms. We had a stay-at-home mom one year that said, "Oh, I take care of creation. I take care of my family." Awesome. How do you, and so I have a sheet for them as a speaker of things to, you know, cover. What are some things that, what are questions I want you to answer while you're presenting to the kids? And then the Acts Out workshop leader will guide people in conversation afterwards about caring for God's creation, and how do we as individuals care for God's creation, whether it be picking up garbage on your way from school or picking up garbage when you're at the playground, whatever that may be. The art studio, we're going to be making a frise, a mural. I have an example. And we've cut out, okay, Mandy has cut out, everybody's going to get 7 little pieces, like little cardstock panels, and everyone's going to get 7 of those. So if you imagine we have 185 plus kids times 7, we've had a lot of panels to continue to cut out. But each panel is going to represent a separate day of creation. And so they're going to use different mediums, including sand, felt, colored pencils, markers, paint, to create a different day on each of those panels. And then they'll be able to fold that up and then spread that out and hang that up at home. So exploring different medias. The Heart and Soul Kitchen, again, a food room, which kids love. We're going to be talking about in that room how we're all created unique. Everyone has special gifts, but also parts of God's creation are so vastly unique. Think about the creatures of the sea. There are some strange-looking creatures of the sea, but God created them for a purpose. So we're going to talk about how each of us may look very, very different, but that God created us in his image. God created us for a reason, and we're meant to be here and meant to help one another. And so they're going to make a fruit parfait using fruit and yogurt and whipped cream and yummy stuff. And then they get to look at each other's and say, "Oh, yours doesn't look like mine," or "Why did you put all the fruit at the bottom and not the, not the yogurt? Why did you put all the yogurt at the bottom?" So they're going to talk about how each of them are created differently. Some have more yogurt than others. Some have more fruit. So that's a fun one for the kids to enjoy. The Holy Word Theater, we are going to be watching a video. However, the video we watched 6 years ago was on VHS. And I wasn't going to watch that one again. So I've been waiting for those videos to come in. And so there is a video, and it will be, there may be 2 videos depending on the age appropriateness. I may have a younger one and an older one, depending on which ones I end up with. But they will get to enjoy popcorn. So in the Holy Word Theater, if you're working in the Holy Word Theater, I want you to go and look at the popcorn maker as a Holy Word workshop leader, so you can become familiar with how to make popcorn. It's super easy. You cut and you dump. It's super easy. But I want you to feel comfortable with that before you come. All right, our schedule, just real briefly, this is on your sheet of paper, I believe, that it's posted on every door. So there's a color for every rotation time. So 4:15 is yellow, and the 6:30 is green, and the Sunday is blue. And so you'll see group names that are already hung on the doors out in our education hallway, and then there are schedules that correspond with those colors. I will be in the binders. We'll make sure that they are marked with what grades are in which groups. We don't always know that right now, because I'll be honest, we're still getting a ton of registrations in. And so there are some combo rooms that are going to be different than what I have originally planned. And so in general, the youngest group is kindergarten. Sometimes it's a kindergarten first grade, depending on my numbers. Music for 4:15 will all be together again. I'll be leading that at 4:15 along with a few others. 6:30, we're going to, again, divide those between our younger and our older students. And so when you look at the 6:30 groups, if you have a workshop and you have, say, the Little Apostles or the Treasure Seekers or the King's Kids, you're going to have music first. So if you're a workshop leader, you will have until 7 till 6:50 before you'll have kids in your room. And so you can adjust your schedule a little bit. If you have the older kids, your kids will be leaving your classroom at 7:20 and won't be coming back. And so you have basically from 6:30 to 7:20 to get your lesson and activities in. If the music on Sunday will be right away again all together with Ian and myself and probably Katie as well. Our workshop time, if you get finished, because there are some lessons that, depending on the group, don't take as long compared to other groups. If you do finish early, I do have extra activities. We have extra activities in the classrooms. There is a cupboard. One cupboard has like the general supplies, like coloring pencils and markers and paper and scissors and those kind of things. And then one of the other cupboards, am I correct, Mandy? One of the other cupboards has all of your activity stuff. So your lesson plan, your binders, all of the supplies you need for that lesson are all in a separate cupboard. We've done that because we do have rooms that are rented during the week. We have a group that uses one of our classrooms every Friday, and so we wanted to start putting our supplies for our rotations into the cupboard, just so that they're not out on the cupboard in case we have groups that are coming in. We may have another group that comes in now every Monday night, and so it will be really important for us to have our stuff for church school in the rotation cupboard. Mandy or myself, most of the time Mandy goes through those and makes sure that we have the supplies we need for the next week. But there are extra activities, and I always have faith talk cards and some other discussion stuff on top of my mailboxes out in the hallway. If you use those, just put them back there so that the next group can use them. But use this time to build relationships. Don't just let them sit idle. If you can have some conversation or interaction, there's memory verse games in the back of the binder. There's a binder in every room, and there's memory verse games of playing hangman and different other things to do with those memory verses. Use the time to build relationships. That's some of the best time, is when you can have things kind of in the back of your mind ready to go if you run out of things like, oh, I finished my activity 10 minutes early. What am I going to do? There are activities that are listed in there. If you can be here 10 to 15 minutes early so that you have time to read the staff note and look at any things, if I have some last minute instructions, or if things have changed or all of a sudden you're short something, which shouldn't happen, but if you're here early, then we can make sure we can get it taken care of. Especially if we have people that aren't going to be here and we have to kind of fill in our gaps, which does happen. If you're here, you can mentally prepare a little bit better for that. And we also have kids that at 6:30 are ready to go by 6:20 looking for their teacher or looking for their shepherd, and they can't find their shepherd anywhere. And so it's helpful if you're here. I do have those, like I said, those staff notes. If you can tell, I rely on those staff notes a lot. It's my way to also give you some encouragement throughout the week. Wear your name tag. Everyone will get a plastic name badge with their name printed on it. It will be stored in the office, in this very first office door, right behind the door. There are some magnetic boards, some magnetic whiteboards, and we just hang those on there. There's a board for 6:30 and a board for 4:15, and then there's a board for the music staff and the Sunday session. If you could leave those here, I know it's really hard to forget, but I'm going to be walking down the hallway and reminding you to drop those off, because we do have to. Part of the reason why we have those is for safety. Anyone that I issue a name badge, that we have filled out a name badge for, has gone through a background check. And that's the only way that we know for sure. If, for instance, I have Pastor Nathan or Pastor John walking down the hallway and they see somebody in the classroom that doesn't have a name badge, that's an adult, they'll question that, because our policy is that we make sure that everybody's gone through a background check and that we know who are in the classroom, especially because there's so many of us. For us to have name badges, it's really an important piece for myself, but also for the other staff, as well as anybody else in the congregation. They know to look for those. My confirmation guides all have them, and so they know to look for those, anyone working with students of any age. If you want to let me know if you could be gone, if you have to be gone, whether 2 weeks in advance, that's fine. Let me know. I would say don't just tell me at 4:15 or 9:30 or 6:30 on a Wednesday night, because I won't remember. I know I won't, because I have people say, well, I'm going to help at 6:30. And I'm like, okay. And then a week later, I'm like, okay, who was that was talking to me about helping? Because I don't remember those things, especially if my mind is in a bunch of different places trying to manage where confirmation and church school and everything is. So you can text me. The other next best thing is to leave a note in my mailbox outside my office door. If you know where my office is, I have a metal mailbox right outside. Do not put it on my desk. It may get swallowed up. And right now, it definitely would be swallowed up if you walked into my office. So you'll want to put it into that mailbox. The child safety policy. This is a newer piece. Okay. Okay, I had my copy. This child safety policy began with background checks that we started last year. It was a policy that was adopted by the council, and it was really to safeguard you and our students. And so as we look at the child safety policy, I think everyone has a copy. If you don't, there's a copy up here. Make sure you get one. It reflects our commitment to the protective care of all of our students. Students and even our teachers and even law enforcement officers only go through a background check once, or if they change jobs. So for instance, my husband, who's in law enforcement, has been in law enforcement since 2004, has not had a second background check done. Not that he needs it, but same with myself. I've been a licensed teacher and I have not had a background check since I graduated from college. And so this is a way for us to protect everybody. So even if you're a licensed teacher or a law enforcement officer, we keep our own background check record on hand. As you look at the policy administrators, it's myself, Pastor John, and Pastor Nathan. I'm the only one that sees anything that you turn in. So when you turn in those sheets, which you need to turn in tonight if I have not done a background check on you, that form, it does have obviously your birth date, your social security number, and your driver's license. Those are kept under lock and key, and I'm the only one that has access to them. So I know with social security numbers and everything, it's kind of an iffy thing. But those do stay under lock and key, and they stay with me until you are done serving. So once you have them on file with me, I will maintain them on file until you are done serving, or your kids graduate, or you transfer out. Then I destroy those. Those are done every 3 years if you are for the criminal background check. So once I've done your criminal background check, after collaborating with a lot of different churches that do this, we're doing it every 3 years. If you are working with our youth or our confirmation students where you're going to be driving students around at all, then we do a motor vehicle record search and check, and that is done yearly. So that is done annually compared to the 3 years as a criminal background check. Once you sign that paper, it does give me permission to do that on a 3-year basis, because that is what our policy states. You will always receive notification if I do a search of your background, because we do a search with a company called Protect My Ministry. And so when I enter your information and they do a national search, you get notification. You also get a volunteer training that I have you go through, an online training session that you don't have to do all at once. But I would like you to go through it because it does talk about the signs of child abuse and the prevalence and how prevalent it is in the United States right now, including in the rural areas. Didn't realize how prevalent it was, and that's my background, is a lot of my background is early childhood and working with children in those kind of situations. And until I watched this training, the updated information that's out there is pretty scary. So I would like you to go through that online training when you get it. via email. Children are just defined as 5th grade and younger. Youth are 6th grade through our high school seniors, and our adults are the 18-year-olds. We talk about this restriction only because we have our high school students and middle school students that would like to work with our younger students, and so they need to be in at least 6th grade and 3 years older than the student that the oldest student with whom they are working. So our 6th graders cannot work with students older than 3rd grade. They can't work with those 4th and 5th graders. So most of them are going to be in those preschool, 1st and 2nd grade rooms, never without an adult, however. Our middle school students, so if they want to work with our middle school students, they must be in 9th grade and at least 3 years older than the oldest student with whom they are working. Our confirmation program did have some high school students working as junior confirmation guides, but again, they were working with our youngest confirmation students, our 6th graders, and they were 11th graders. Background checks are required. If anything comes up unsatisfactory, the unsatisfactory would be basically there is any findings of prior sexual or physical abuse, prior conviction of that, or other criminal record that may inhibit you from doing your job. In other words, if you are going to be a driver for Friday Night Live, our 4th through 6th grade retreat, or our confirmation students, and say you have 6 DUIs, that may inhibit you from driving with our young people because you may be a liability. And so we do look at that as far as on a case-by-case basis. I never make any of those decisions of whether you can or cannot serve by myself. Anytime I have a question of whether something is satisfactory or unsatisfactory, I take that directly to my direct supervisor, which is Pastor John. He's the only other one that would discuss anything to do with church school. Pastor Nathan would be my direct contact if they're working with high school students. And again, for instance, non-sufficient fund charges, those do not inhibit you from doing your job here. So that those kind of charges that come up on background checks aren't going to inhibit you. But just so you know that those are the things that I look for. All right. The next one, the 2 adult rule. Always having 2 adults in a classroom with students at any time. I know sometimes that has been a problem if we have had low numbers on our adults and we're down to like 1 adult with a group of kids. If that can be avoided at any cost, that's my preference. Combining classrooms or coming and talking to me and finding another adult to come and help is the best solution. If that has to be changed because of circumstances, then we do everything in our power to prevent any closed doors or curtains that are over the windows. So we make sure that I have a visual whenever I walk by the rooms. Name badges, again, those are really important. Those are how any other staff or congregation members know that you've gone through a background check, is you've been issued a name badge. Which is the other reason why those are sometimes really hard if I find out we've lost one, because I do try and keep track of those. I can't keep track of them digitally like the school can, because I can't do a picture ID. A picture ID at this point, there are some congregations that do picture IDs for their volunteers, but this is the best solution that we have right now. Ratio of 1 to 16, there should be never more than 1 adult with 16 kids in any class at any time. So that is a really high ratio. My goal is to keep it under 12. 1 to 12, 1 to 10 would be my preference. Physical contact for discipline purpose is not allowed. Now you can give them a little side hug, but not for discipline. Transportation, overnight stays and allegations. Well, the overnight stays and transportation really apply in our policy manual for those youth and trips and those confirmation events that happen. Any allegations, if you suspect, and this would be fine if you were to turn to the 3rd page in your manual or in your policy, 5.8, it's a response to allegations. The way we have this laid out is they're all considered serious if there are any allegations that are brought forward, and I do take them serious and have to require some action. I am a mandated reporter as a licensed teacher, even though I'm not in the school system. And Pastor John and Pastor Nathan, as professionals in the church, full-time professionals, they are mandated by our synod to be reporters. And so basically what that means is if there are any reports of allegations of misconduct or abuse, they immediately need to come to myself, the lead pastor, or our associate pastor. The staff member will then report the incident to the appropriate authorities as deemed necessary. None of us, either John, Pastor Nathan, or myself, would ever do that alone. We would always have one or another staff member with us, as far as I would do it probably with Pastor John and vice versa. If the accused is currently serving as a volunteer in children or youth ministry, he or she will be removed from contact with all children and youth until the investigation is complete. All those reports, anytime you suspect anything that is off, if you have a red flag that goes up or a hair that stands on the back of your neck, when you have a parent that comes to pick them up, or you have kids that say something odd that doesn't seem to fit, get as much information as you can. And what I mean by that is if you have a student that says, my back hurts because my dad hit me. Okay, there could be multiple things that happen in that situation. It could be that it was maybe a spanking that was to avert some behavior. But finding out things like who was with the child when it happened, how long ago did it happen, does it happen often, are you scared? Those kind of questions that you can ask the child at the time that they say something to you would give you the best answer most of the time. If you don't ever feel comfortable asking those questions, don't. I don't want to put you in a situation as a volunteer that you're not comfortable with. So bring that information to me, and then from there, we will go forward with what we deem as necessary. I do have to document any of that. So if we were to file charges or file allegations of any kind, be aware that if you were the one that brought that to me, we may need to take a statement from you so that you can because you will have heard it firsthand. So we haven't had to do that, but I'm just saying it does happen, and it does happen to colleagues of mine across the synod. A couple of reminders: our first days of workshops are after Labor Day. Yep. Oh, the 9th and the 13th. Yeah, I have it circled here on my paper that I had that wrong date. It's the 9th and the 13th. The 12th is in my head because that's the concert night. We have a special concert that weekend. So you're not going to want to miss it that Saturday night, but workshops will happen on the 12th. And October 4th is Kids Sabbath. There's a typo at the end there again, I see. As we kind of wrap up, I know this was a lot of information, and for some, this is not new information. But I want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to give you a little couple bits of information that I've had colleagues pass on to me. The language of faith formation. This is all part of what we are here for. There are 5 principles serving as a foundation for passing on the faith. Faith is formed through personal, trusted relationships, often that begin in our own homes. The church is a living partnership between the ministry of congregation and the ministry of home. How we bridge those together happens right here. Where Christ is present in faith, the home is church also. So when you start doing faith at home, Christ is obviously present. Faith is caught more than it is taught. I will tell you that faith is caught much more than it is taught. You are always an example. Whether you are doing something or not, you are still leading by example. And so our kids see that. And I know that when Teresa mentioned, being here is part of that example that she wants for her kids, the same thing is true. If your kids see you here and present, even those 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds that you're like, why, they don't get it, but they get being here, and they will understand the love that they feel here by the other people around them. The transition from into church school that starts at age 4, if the kids have been here and the kids have been loved on by the people that are here, whether that means that parents come to adult faith formation and the kids are in the nursery at 6:30 on Wednesday night, the kids know those kids and they get to learn other people that are here that care about them. So it is caught more than it is taught, and what you're doing is being watched. If we want Christian children and youth, we need to surround them with Christian adults active in the faith. Tending to youth and family means first tending to our own lives of faith and discipleship and learning how to follow. The 4 keys to faith formation are we having caring conversations amongst our families and amongst each other? Are we having daily devotions and prayer? What does it mean to pray together as a family? Are we doing service? Are we serving by being the hands and feet of Christ? And finally, do we have those rituals and traditions, those patterns and routines that claim time and space as God's time and space together? These can be as ordinary and mundane as daily meal prayers, and as celebratory and annual as birthdays, baptismal days, or whatever we want to do when we put up that Christmas tree. Rituals and traditions, what you set for the kids to look forward to, and as a family. The 3 characteristics that I talked a little bit about faith-bearing and faith-forming adults, which is who you all are you authentic? What you see is what you get. Are you available? Are you both present in common and in those key moments of our kiddos? And are you affirming? Are you adults who see in youth what they cannot see in themselves? Are there any questions? Really? No questions?